Hey everybody, Matt Steichen here. You may know me from talking to me at Bob Dylan shows or reading stories that I've written about Bob Dylan's work, concert reviews I've written and post online over the years, the many Dylan chat rooms I've written in and shared content in over the years from my Twitter page that is almost exclusively about Bob Dylan related things, and for my recent appearances on Pod Dylan with Rob Kelly. Uh, that's been a fun venture. But really, over the years, I've really been wanting to find new ways to kind of share my thoughts about different things going on in the Bob Dylan world. One of my favorite things is talking about Bob Dylan, and it's one of the only things that I'm really qualified to talk about at any depth or length. But over the years, get busy with work and kids and all that stuff, and have never gotten around to starting one of these. And Bob Dylan is always creating, and just like last week, he released a brand new 17-minute song at midnight. So he never does what you expect, and it's nice to have an outlet to share my thoughts when things like this happen. And with the new quarantine rules in place, I've suddenly got a lot more time at home. So I thought I would start sharing my thoughts on things going on in the Bob Dylan universe with a series of short video blogs. And honestly, it's a lot easier to just say things sometimes than it is to try to squeeze them into the length of a tweet. So I'm thinking this will be a good way for me to go a little bit more in depth about the Bob Dylan things that I would like to comment on as they come in. I'm tinkering with the idea of calling it Bobservations, but that's after a day of running that through my head, it's already kind of turning into something that maybe I don't want to go with. So maybe I'll just for now call it, Matt's Bob Dylan thoughts or something. But what really kind of re-sparked this idea in me, I recorded with Rob for Pod Dylan a couple weeks ago now, and that episode should be coming out next week or the weekend after. But we were supposed to talk about Dark Eyes, and we did. But before that, he asked me how the shows last fall were. And it occurred to me, kind of caught me off guard. And it occurred to me that I said, the shows were great. They were the best ones in years. And I realized that I probably say that every time anyone asks me how the Bob Dylan shows were that I just saw. I probably said that, every time over the last 20 years when someone knows I've been to shows. I've never been disappointed by what I've gotten in person to the point where I would complain. He usually delivers, and I'm usually happy with what I get. But it got me thinking, what is it about the 2018 shows I listened to on bootlegs and the 2019 shows, the three that we attended in person last fall as a family, that really separated these shows from the shows he'd been doing 5 or 10 or even 15 years ago? I'm realistic. I know I would never consider any show I see now as good as the shows I saw in 2000 or 2001 or 2002 or 2003 even. But as the modern era of Dylan shows go, honestly can say that I enjoyed the 2019 shows as much, if not more, than everything that I've seen in the last 10 or 15 years. So it got me to thinking, what was it about these shows that separated them? And I know that if you're not a hardcore Dylan fan that hasn't seen 20, 30, 40, 50, hundreds, or 1,000 shows, if you're someone, going because he came to your town and you've never seen him before, you're going to bring a lot of baggage that affects the way you view the show. What are your expectations? How much of his music do you know? If you're not familiar with songs that aren't on Greatest Hits 1 or 2, that's going to affect how you view the whole thing. And even how good your seats are. I know every word to every Bob Dylan song practically, but there have been times where I got last minute seats that weren't very good, and it's a lot harder to connect with what's happening on stage. Really, he's an intimate performer, and if you're not close enough to see his facial expressions and his interactions with, I think that can have a great effect on your experience as a concert goer. Also, the set list and the arrangements and the bands, those are still all factors. The old days were great. I remember when every song to song, you wouldn't know, what you were going to get, and that added an element to the song, to the shows as well. But really, for me, what it comes down to, I'm there, is Bob's vocals. And I think the vocals show how committed he is and how in the moment he is, how present he is as he's delivering his songs. Now, he's played some of these songs hundreds, thousands of times. So it's easy to imagine that singing them night after night for a whole tour or a whole decade, he can kind of go through the motions and get disconnected and just kind of recite the songs and not sing them as much. And he gets sloppy with his enunciation, and singing away from the mic sometimes is a big factor, especially like last tour when he sang Thunder on the Mountain. Half the words he was singing when his mouth was nowhere near the mic, and that affected the performance, as well as far as how it's viewed. But when he's really committed and locked in, it doesn't really matter what songs he's playing, what the arrangements are, or the band that's playing with him. For me personally, anyway, my experience enjoying a show is almost entirely tied to how good the vocal performance is. And in 2019, I thought the vocal performances were absolutely great. When I say reciting, I remember like in 2004, I was on the rail with a bunch of really hardcore Bob fans that had been there all day. And after the show, a bunch of them were really annoyed. They were like, what is his problem? Why is he doing that? And it was because he was singing every song all completely chopped up. He sang Positively 4th Street, and he sang the whole thing like, you've got a lot of nerve to say you are my friend. And he did that for like 10 straight songs to end the show. And then, of course, during that time, he also got into the up singing habit. So those kind of things can really, ruin a show when it starts to feel like Bob's disconnected and not engaged in what he's actually singing. And it also his voice, physically speaking, his voice has gotten, worse over the last 30 or 40 years. That drop off from 75 to 78. The difference between the first concerts of 1988 and then 1989. And then really, I think, struggled pretty consistently until about 1994. And then what I would think of as the golden age of his actual vocal performances are about from 1994 until 2002 or 2003, when it started to be more of a vocal struggle. And he still delivered amazing performances during this time, but it seemed like he had to focus a lot harder to deliver an impassioned vocal without going into the barking and rasping and things like that. And you can hear the difference, as 2001 and Love and Theft started to get a little raspier, and then 2006 Modern Times is a little raspier than that. And then by 2009, he wasn't really even trying to avoid the rasp. You can hear on Together Through Life and Christmas in the Heart, he really leans into it. And like on Tempest, when he sings, you can dress up your wounds in a blood-clotted rag, it seems like he really is happy to use that growly, bluesy voice. And really, as a live concert goer, I started to think, okay, that this might be the end, even if he's motivated and mentally stimulated by continuing to perform. If his voice is going to degenerate at this rate, it's discouraging. You're still happy to see him every time he comes around, but he can't sing as smoothly as he would like to deliver the songs. So I'd say by the Tempest era, I love Tempest as an album, but it was discouraging as a live concert goer to think, okay, he's physically incapable of delivering these songs as well as he would like to. That's why Shadows in the Night, I think, is just, so revelatory. It was just amazing to hear, like, okay, if he focuses and he's in the right environment, he can still deliver. And that voice is still there underneath. It just requires, lighter backing and more focus on staying smooth. So that really brings me to where we were in 2018 and 19, because since he started singing the Shadows in the Night songs live, his vocals have been better on all the songs. I think he re-engaged with the idea of delivering smooth vocals. And I think it was a conscious decision to sing raspier and barkier over the years. And then he came back with a conscious decision to deliver songs more smoothly. And you can hear that the way he sings Lenny Bruce and Girl from the North Country now. He's really focused on, okay, if I have a quiet band here, I can deliver a really clean vocal, and that's going to come across. And so those were the highlights of the shows for me last fall. And then the elasticity that's still in his vocals when he wants to sing that way, when he sings When I Paint My Masterpiece, I left Rome and pulled into Brussels. 10 years ago, none of us really knew if he was capable of still singing, a word like that. So when he started doing it again, it was just like, oh, this is exciting. He still can do it. And then set list wise, he dropped all the Shadows in the Night songs. So now you can go see him and get 20 original Bob Dylan songs again, which really opens things up for the concert layout itself. Like you can go see him play 20 Bob Dylan songs, and in this expressive way, with a much smoother vocal than 5 or 10 years ago. So those are the things I really enjoyed about this new batch of shows, as well as kind of the set list too. With the 20 songs, he was playing some songs I'd never heard before in 50 shows plus. So that's a nice addition too, to know that you can see some new things rather than the set list that's the exact same as it was last year and the year before. And he made it a little more of a rock show too, playing some songs where he let Charlie do some electric guitar solo work, like Not Dark Yet, and It Takes a Lot to Laugh. So heading back in a more rock direction too, with his piano at the center of the stage, playing the harmonica again, and even turning the lights up a little bit so you can actually see him better on stage. And all that stuff came together to make it a much more fan-friendly experience. So like I said, I don't think he could ever impress me live like he did 20 years ago. But if you're calling modern Bob's era 2004 to present, the shows last fall were as good as anything that I've seen. And I'm a cheerleader for Bob Dylan, of course, but I hope that in 2022 I'm saying the exact same thing about how much better these shows are than the 2019 shows. I certainly hope so. I hope we can all get back out of the house and go see Bob Dylan on the road again very soon. One more comment I wanted to add in this very first episode of Bobservations, or Matt's Bob Dylan Thoughts, or whatever you want to call it. I've listened to Rob Kelly's Pod Dylan episode this morning while I was cleaning my garage, and I've read a lot of things on Twitter about people's different commentaries about that song. There's a lot to dig into and say about it. One thing that I haven't seen anyone but myself point out is the parallels between the last part where Bob sings "Don't Worry, Mr. President," and those next 4 lines at the 14:28 mark of the song. It actually parallels the song "Life Will Kill You" by Warren Zevon, and I would not have noticed that except for I had been listening to that album earlier in the day before Murder Most Foul came out. And so I think that's an interesting parallel, because it's not just a reference to a different song like the rest of the song is. It more follows what Bob's done in his previous work as far as modeling a song after another song. So if you listen at the 14:28 mark where Bob sings "Don't Worry, Mr. President," brothers, what brothers, that whole part, and then listening to "Life Will Kill Ya," where he sings about the President of the United States, and the whole song and whole album really are about how everyone's going to die. Life will kill you. That's what I said. Life will find. Then you'll be dead. But in that song, Warren Zevon sings, "From the President of the United States to the lowliest rock and roll star, the doctor is in and he'll see you now. He don't care who you are. Some get the awful, awful diseases. Some get the knife. Some get the gun. Some get to die in their sleep at the age of 101. Even the phrasing, how Bob sings that part, is really interesting. And it's interesting that he would take a song by an artist he loves, Warren Zevon, and a part of a song that is about mortality and about the President of the United States, and insert it 14 and a half minutes into a song about the Kennedy assassination. So that I thought that was a cool thing, as a fan of Bob and of Warren Zevon. Cool thing to notice, and you can listen into and see if you agree that it seems like Bob kind of lifted that part of the song and based his song off of that, which is cool with me. It's the folk process, and Bob's been doing it since 1961, so I'm not going to stop him. It's cool with me. Anyway, my name's Matt Steichen. You can find me on Twitter at Matt_Steich. I'll be on another episode of Pod Dylan with Rob Kelly coming up real soon to talk about Dark Eyes. Thanks for listening, and this was kind of an intro episode. Hopefully the next ones will be shorter, but periodically I'm going to have to link this up to my Twitter, and when I have thoughts on Bob Dylan that are longer than 280 characters. Maybe I'll shoot some more short videos here and post them on YouTube. God bless with peace, tranquility, and goodwill. Thanks.